all. Thank you for joining us, and we're very much looking forward to today's session, The Innovative Mindset. This is the fourth in a four-part series exploring innovation based upon the best practices outlined in the book series by our author, Ripi Singh. Just a couple of general announcements. As you joined today's session as an attendee, your microphones were muted and will remain muted until such time as we enter the Q&A, at which time you'll be able to unmute and ask questions and enter the discussion. But if at any time you wish to make a comment, share a thought, please, I encourage you to use the chat feature on Zoom to do so. We find that it helps engage in a more robust Q&A as all of us have shared our thoughts as we go and listen to Ripi's presentation. I am Kevin Bully. I am the president and CEO of the research and advisory firm NERAC, and happy to host today's session. And again, welcome to all. Ripi and I have been acquainted now for just a little over 8 years, and we were brought together by a mutual acquaintance at the University of Connecticut who believed that based upon our shared interest and passion for innovation, that we would make for a great relationship discussion. And they were absolutely correct. That early conversation has led to a series of collaborations in our working relationship, as well as a strong, deep personal friendship. Ripi has brought together his thoughts about best practices in innovation behaviors, leadership, and management. NERAC supports these activities through its own research and advisory services, supplying the information that helps to drive innovation. We're pleased today to offer the fourth in the four-part series, this titled The Innovation Mindset. And with that, Ripi, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. And yes, of course, last 8 years have been absolutely fabulous working with you, with your clients, with your partners, and everything that you have done for me. So thank you so much for all of your support, both professionally and personally. Really grateful for your association for all these years, and hopefully we will continue for many, many years to come. So thank you. Let's get on to the session. This is the fourth one covering the fourth book in a set of 4 volumes on leading innovation. We started our journey in January. We talked about the innovation purpose. Why should we innovate? Then we discussed how and what of innovation. Today, in April, in the fourth session, we will actually talk about the mindset piece of it. You know, when I started the innovation practice 8 years ago, and Kevin knows it very, very well, it was all around the framework. And then slowly and slowly, it evolved around the human side of it. And that's when the purpose came in, and that's when the mindset came in. In fact, I owe the fourth volume to one of my clients from Singapore who insisted that I look at the human side of innovation and why we struggle and what can we do to overcome the mental barriers, the mental block. And then I had to go compile all of that piece. And that's what I will share with you today. Now, just to recap, because you know, we are all busy people, and over the period of last few weeks, we may have missed out on a few things. Just a quick recap of volume 1. We discussed this innovation purpose. That's the model where we said at the lower level, when you're driven purely for financial gains, but then there are people who are driven by technology. And then the technology can actually also be purposeful to help humans. You know, technology for the sake of technology is not enough. If we think of technology to actually solve a social problem or a planetary sustainability problem, it makes a lot more sense. Over the years, in many cases, we have come up with innovative technologies which have actually not necessarily helped humans live a better life. So there is a purpose, and there's a hierarchy of purpose that we need to think of. It's not necessary that everybody's purpose should be to serve humanity, but at least that should be a constraint, if not one of the objectives in whatever purpose you may choose to pursue. Then we talk about how you execute a single project? How do you execute an innovative activity? And we looked at a simple value chain that starts with marketplace insight, going through various ideation steps, and qualifying the concept like a business case, run it through a purpose and ethics filter so that you know what you're doing is the right thing in the right way, and then you execute it like any other R&D project. In section 3, we talked about a framework where we looked at, is your innovation, is your company innovating in response to market need? Then you're a follower. Are you forecasting the market and innovating in anticipation of the market need? Then you're like a smart forecaster. Or are you innovating in creating a market need? So are you a visionary trendsetter where you bring products and services to the customers which customers were never asking for it and didn't even realize that they could get it until you brought it to them. And then the top level could be robust and resilient, where you are either a disruptor or you can handle disruption. And that's mainly, we also discovered there's a lot to do with strategy and talent and capital to become robust and resilient. Now, to climb this ladder of profile, we also looked at the various tools that we need to engage in, and we brought the purpose and the profile and the practices together in a single map. And we said you can figure out where you were when your business started, and then over a period of time it may have changed, and you are somewhere in this map today, and then you can realize, well, you know what, I need to fix it. I need to up the game on my purpose, and I also need to up the game on my profile. So you can figure out what tools and processes you need to implement to take that journey. That's not enough. And we did mention right in the beginning of this talk that we have to look at a possible information management system and a human mindset. A lot of innovation and strategy by various companies is handled through Microsoft Office. You ask people, where is your roadmap? You get one PowerPoint. You ask 6 people of their roadmap, you get 4 different PowerPoint charts. And then you ask the engineer, you get an Excel file. And then at the end of the year, when you want to get into a strategic plan for the next year, you get into a room and you work with stickies and you create more PowerPoints and more Excel files and more sticky notes. Right? If you really want to change the culture of innovation, you have to build a very strong foundation of processes in keeping the entire organization aligned. So you need a good information management system. Now, these are still all of these things that we talked up until now are tools and processes. They are here to help, but the human mind must be motivated to follow those processes, must be driven to use those tools. I've got lots of tools in my garage, but if I don't want to build the furniture in my house, I will not do it. What does it take to build the next mindset? You got to understand that we are actually kind of stuck in the past a lot. The first thing we have to do is we have to unlearn some of the practices. We have to undo the stuff that we are so used to doing up until now. Okay? And then you need to think about both the changing the mindset at the leadership level, and that's where it has to start, and then reigniting creativity across the entire organization. Okay? And you can't reignite the creativity until the leadership takes a reboot and says, okay, we're going to do things differently from here onwards. And after you ignite creativity one more time, then you have to accept that things will not work out and some of them will fail. And you have to embrace that attitude of exploration and accepting failure. One of the things that Kevin and I have practiced a lot, whenever we want to do something, we don't even call it a project, we call it a pilot. Then it suddenly sets our mind as if it's okay if we fail, right? And just defining that as a pilot rather than project just makes the whole thing so easy. So that's the step. Again, it's all about the mindset. Let's talk about this. And I'm going to share with you a short story before I go deeper into that. I won't read this thing. I will let you read this, read the content over here. I don't know. That's how things are done around here. And a lot of organizations are like that. In my lifetime, I have been that monkey who's moved around a lot of organizations every few years. And every time I went into a new organization, I wanted to climb the ladder and I was given the beating. And, and perhaps there must have been times when I became a part of that monkey who beat other monkeys without realizing why. It's just, I'm not perfect, but I can relate to this. I've seen it time and again in my career and with my clients. And sometimes we just get surprised. And when you ask a new question, the answer is, oh, we don't know. That's how we do things here. And that's what is culture. And who said that, culture will eat strategy for breakfast? That's exactly what it is. Anyway, so the struggle to innovate, there are lots of, you can call it reasons or you can call it excuses. And we have heard many of these before. Oh, we know the customer very well. We know when they want something new. The future is forever, but the present is this quarter. It's always about this quarter. We need to be process oriented. We cannot be wild and crazy. We don't have margins to innovate. Well, the innovation is about creating additional margins and creating additional revenues. I don't belong to the innovative group. That's not true. Everybody in the organization has an opportunity to innovate at some point or the other, whether it's at the desktop level or it's a disruptive business model. Let's focus on the metrics. And that is also another piece that kills innovation. This is a funny cartoon that I found. Chief idea killer, VP of no, director of onerous reporting and all that. And then there's a manager of new growth ideas, and that job is actually vacant over here. This org chart is a little exaggeration, but I will tell you, the innovation killers are very neatly disguised in organizations where people hold titles and they want to hold on to that title. So, where are the traps and the pitfalls? We believe that innovation can happen on its own. No, it does not. It needs a garden. We believe that if you send a few people for training, you can declare you're ready to innovate. I get that a lot. My clients will say, "Oh, just give me 2 days of workshop, and I'll take care of the innovation from here onwards." That's almost like take a 1 hour tour of the physical gym, and then you think that you're now built your muscles. No, innovation is a mental muscle, and you have to go to the gym every day. One workshop does not cut it. Okay. And then the executives will demand zero failure. The experiment and learn is kind of, oh, we don't have money, we don't have time for this. Another one thing which I still hear from a lot of companies when we want to start the innovation pathway, they say, "Oh, let's create an idea box. Let's create an email address. If you have new ideas at company.com, so that anybody who has a new idea can just send an email or leave a note over here." No, those ideas don't go very far. So you got to make it personal. So there are a few things that are so ingrained into the culture, they don't help. The leadership mindset, that's the number one problem. So when we talked about struggle, then we want to go on to leadership reboot. There are three things that I've seen over here that hurt. Number one, management incentives. In any company, the annual bonus programs are driven towards metrics, towards near-term profits. And you can get near-term profits through productivity and quality. Okay. And so management incentives, if you're not incentivized to innovate, but you're incentivized to produce towards lean, towards productivity, it doesn't help. The risk capacity, excessive risk aversion. We don't even say, okay, I can afford to take a chance on 0.5% of my revenue or 1% of revenue. No, when you say it should be zero, then you have no investment that you want to make, which is high risk. And without risk taking, it's very, very hard to innovate. And the third thing, which most leaders do not agree with me, is actually the leadership development programs. Most management consultants, they will provide you with some valuable insight and they give you examples of successful companies. And unfortunately, all of those programs and the content is based on companies that were successful in the past. It's all in hindsight. And you're feeding the leadership with a dose of success formula which is a copycat of the past rather than creator of a better future. And this is a thing that really hurts. Just before this session, we were talking about a book called Good to Great. I was at Pratt in 2003 or 4, and I was told to read this book. And I really loved it. And we followed it. And all of us were asked to learn from this and use it. And we used it. But tell you what, when I started practicing innovation coaching, I found out that the formulas given in what makes a company good to great, many of the companies are not in business now, which means those formulas don't work anymore. And I started looking at that book through the innovation lens. And today, only half of it works. The other half is not valid in today's context. And I don't know, when we have gone through the entire fourth revolution, if there is any element of good to great that would still be valid. So let's be careful about all these bestseller management books. And based on that, good to great, Scott Galloway came up with the book called The Four. Okay, it talks about Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple, and it gives you the recipe of how to become $1 trillion business. But let me tell you something. You follow that formula today, you cannot become the next Facebook or Google or Apple. That will not work in the next 20 years. That formula is again obsolete. By the time we understand the success formula behind innovation, it's obsolete and you need to look for a new one. So let's be careful what we pick from bestseller management books and top-notch management consulting firms and thought leaders, so to say. In more recent ones, Start with the Why, Simon Sinek. Very popular book. His TED Talk became very popular. The guy has a few million followers, and now we believe that he knows, he has answers to everything. Let's talk about Start with the Why. Start with the why and going to how and what is what Simon Sinek's golden circle is. But I tell you, innovators ask exactly opposite of that. They ask why not, they ask how about, and they ask what if, because that's where the exploration comes in. Once you have done your innovation and you want to sell that product, then you can go to the market saying why you did this, how you did this, what was done, all that stuff. That comes afterwards. But if you want to innovate, you start with the why not with the why. It's again another piece of mindset. And here are some examples, some beautiful examples. And I'll just share with you statements that came out during Industry 2.0. Okay. Henry Morton, who was at Stevens Institute of Technology, talks about Edison's light bulb, and he says, everyone acquainted with the subject will recognize that the light bulb is a conspicuous failure. Okay. Michigan Savings Bank, when Henry Ford wanted his company financed, said, the horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty. William Preece of British Post Office, General Master, he said, Americans may need the telephone, but we do not. We have plenty of messenger boys. Lord Kelvin, heavier than air flying machines are impossible. When he said heavier than air flying machines are impossible, somebody said, why? He said, well, because we have birds, nature is the best. And he said, well, you know what? If nature is the best, then your train should have legs. The train has wheels, so there may be other ways to fly. Let's figure it out. We hear it all the time. When I was growing up in engineering school, composites didn't exist, and people thought that steel is the strongest material we can ever have. But today we have carbon composites much stronger than steel. During Industry Third Revolution, we heard all of this. No, these are in our lifetime. We have seen this. When Steve Chen sold YouTube to Google, he said there is just not that many videos I want to watch. And now look where YouTube is. Robert Metcalfe said, I predict internet will soon go spectacularly supernova, and by 1996 it will collapse. Even the big people that we believe, Bill Gates' remark in 2003 was, these Google guys want to be billionaires and rock stars and go to conferences and all that. Let's see if they still want to run a business in 2 to 3 years. Chairman of IBM thought that there's a world market of maybe 5 computers. Today, every household has 5 computers. And I think my son's time will come when every individual in the house will have 5 computers. Or maybe 5 computers will be embedded in your body by then, who knows? I was at Pratt 15 years ago, and we said aerospace will never accept 3D printed parts. They're already here. If you guys have had a chance, I would like for you to watch the debate between Jack Ma and Elon Musk. And they're both highly successful entrepreneurs. And Jack Ma says that AI can never beat human intelligence. And Elon Musk says AI will be so powerful that we will be looking at it just like chimpanzee looks at the computer today. It'll be so far ahead of us. Now, remember, these two top-notch entrepreneurs today have made exactly opposite statements. So we know for sure one of them is going to be wrong. So that's the piece of mindset that we have to watch out for. Yeah, long ago, Robert from the marketing side gave a bit of distribution of human mind. He said, when you come up with a new product and you want to take it to the market, 2.5% of your population will buy it outright because they are simply explorers. They don't even see what it is. They just buy it. They just want to buy anything that's new to the market. And 13% are early adopters. And then there's early majority, there's late majority, and then there are laggards. So that's the buying side. But then the buying side is all related to the mindset. And it's the same mindset that exists in organizations also. If you take a organization with a reasonable sample size of 25, 30 people onwards, and I've seen all the way up to 6,000 engineers in one company, this distribution is pretty true. About 3% of the employees are highly innovators, and they are already innovating, and they're actually hiding their innovation because management doesn't support them. When management begins to give the message, the early adopters start following immediately, and they say, okay, well, I won't be beaten and I'll do it. And then early majority starts bringing innovation to the table when it is tied to their objectives, when it is tied to their capability, and they kind of like it and they can feel it, they follow it. And then there is a 1/3 of your organization which needs some kind of an incentive or a reward or a threat or a fear of losing the job. They will adapt to innovation only at that time. And then there is the last 16% where, bless them, bless their heart, they might have to find a new job when you start to drive the organization to be highly innovative. They may not innovate at all at any point, and they may even resist. Those who resist, there's a term for them. It's called cave person, caveman, cave woman. And I did not coin this term. I heard it from Darden professors. And then I recently found it in Wikipedia. It stands for consistently against virtually everything. Okay, and there are always 2 to 3% cave people in any organization, and no matter what you do, they will not come with you. So if you want to build a mindset, you have to really go after making a place a safe place to explore. So these 16% will always be there, and then create objectives and train people and allow them to learn and fail to get this half. And if you get the half, you can build the momentum. I like this. I like this phrase from Jack Welch. He said, "If the rate of change on outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, your end is near." So the question is, how much will it cost if a competitor launches a product or a service before you do, and you are now forced to respond? So looking inside the organization and outside the organization, you got to figure out a way that you accept innovation and change within the organization to be faster than outside. So if the world today is rapidly going through digital transformation within your organization, you're going to have to build that piece. Otherwise, you could be blackberried or blockbusted or Kodak, and whatever name you want to use, whatever adjective you want to use, it will be one of those. And we don't want that. And we've seen that from our profile journey last time that, the risk is always there. I hear statements like return on investment. In today's transformation with Industry 4.0, you must take into account the cost of not investing, which most organizations ignore. They're always looking for actual returns to actual investments, and they're looking for tangible dollars to tangible dollars. And that's where the challenge is. So I always advise my clients that in terms of returns, look at the tangibles and the intangibles on top of it. And in terms of investment, whatever you're investing today, take out of that the cost of not investing, which is very, very hard to estimate. And that cost could be as high as going bankrupt. Now, back to the mindset piece. How executives sway the culture. If the CEO is here, if CEO is amongst the early adopters, okay, he's sitting over here, the management will exhibit bias in that direction. And the people over here, the early adopters and the early majority, they will flourish and company will innovate. And if the CEO, because this distribution stays like that pretty much, the most employee normal distribution is pretty independent of who the CEO is, but the management behavior leans towards where the CEO is, where the C-suite is. And if the CEO, and I've seen it time and again, is amongst the late majority or is over here, the management leans in that direction. These guys are kind of alienated from producing something. The organization really behaves like a laggard. So it's very, very important that leadership reboots in some sense. Either the existing leader changes the mind or the existing leader is changed by someone else. Let the board bring a new CEO or whatever. Talking about mindset and talking about language. This phrase, failure is not an option, from the movie Apollo 13 with Gene Kranz, and this poster, this has become a very common poster. This is a bumper sticker. You see that in organizations. And when organizations are pushing for productivity and shop floor quality and stuff, I have seen posters of this type all over. And I personally do not like it. Because when you are innovating, failure is an option. It can happen. We need, within the innovation mindset framework, we need to replace this poster with failure to explore and learn is not an option. You see, what happens is that statement is not wrong, but that statement is taken out of context. That statement was made when 3 lives were at risk and you had few hours to do it. And failure means those 3 are dead and you have just that much time to solve the problem. Crisis innovation is different than sustained evolutionary innovation. Right? Failure is not an option was a good case building the vaccine for COVID, but it may not be the good case, good slogan for every other innovation in health sector. So as a part of opening up the mindset, failure to explore and learn is not an option. And there are some other terms that I have learned and created over the years during my jobs. We have always done it this way. That needs to be replaced by up until now. I learned it from Darden School again, because up until now shows that I respect the way we have done things so far, but I'm open to changing it from here onwards. It's a very nice way to say. Up until now, we have done it this way. Great. Spending versus investing. I had that discussion with my VP at one time. He said, "How much have you spent?" I said, "0." He said, "But I see 1.8 million spent over here." I said, "No, sir, that is not spending. That was investment." He said, "Oh, I like that. I think I can use that with my CEO." It is true how you think differently with the same term. When it comes to innovation, if you think of spending, your mindset works on reducing the expenses. If you think of it as investing, your mindset is now focused on maximizing the return on investment. So you start asking different questions when you think of the budget allocated to you, whether you're going to treat it as a spending or you're going to treat it as an investment. How much money is at risk? How much money am I willing to invest in learning? How much money am I willing to put into so that what comes out is either a product or a new piece of knowledge? And here is another beautiful thing. Oh, I can't do this because blah, 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 blah. Reasons, excuses, and all that stuff. Replace it with I can do it when Because now you have rephrased it from a problem that is holding you back to a possible solution to get something going. So there is a lot of terminology and language that we need to build into an organization's culture in everyday use so that the mind is open. And when I talk about everyday use, I'm actually also adopting a safety model from almost 80 years ago. Henry analyzed a lot of shop floor accidents in the 1930s, and he gave a little triangle called Henrik's safety triangle or something. He said for every fatality, there are 30 there are 30 injuries, and there are so many lost days, and there are 300 near miss incidents, and there are like 3,000 at risk behaviors. He actually recorded that. He said it's a pyramid. And his hypothesis was if you reduce the at risk behaviors, that means every day do something that makes your workplace a little bit safer. Over a period of time, you will reduce the number of injuries and number of fatalities in the organization. And I'm quite convinced that the same philosophy works with innovation as well. For a company to get one disruptive product or service to the market, there are probably multiple trend setting innovations that happen and a significant number of evolutionary changes that they have gone through on a regular basis, all the way down to everybody doing something little better, a little different at their workbench level. And that is where the culture actually gets killed when first level supervisors, managers do not encourage widespread workbench innovations. It starts right there. So we must allow a large number of small, everyday, everywhere, everybody engaged in doing something innovative. One of the things that we practice, again, copying from the safety side of it. At UTC, we used to have a thing called Safety Minute. Every staff meeting would start with somebody saying, one particular thing I saw was an at-risk behavior. We made some change and we think we are a little bit safer, just for the mindset piece. So the same thing we can introduce with regards to Innovation Minute. And now I've successfully done it with many companies and they love it. And so many new things just pop up because you bring an innovative news that you either heard on TV or you saw it on LinkedIn or wherever to a staff meeting. And this is completely unconnected with your main business. And you just throw it out there on the table. And sometimes you ask a question, what does it mean to our business? And it triggers a new idea. Okay? It has worked on number of occasions. I'm going to skip the example story here. Here is another question that I get asked many times. Is hiring one of the elements that one should consider during building your innovation culture? And I will tell you what, one thing that I noticed during my few years of leadership in corporate America, and I had to hire many people, is that the system that exists, which is designed to screen out the laggards and the cave people, also unintentionally screens out the innovators. The resume of the innovator is always so unconventional that HR will say, oh, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking. The reality is that the hiring team is somewhere here. They just fail to understand. They fail to spot the innovator. And the more we go towards these automated AI-based systems, which are trying to now screen, the narrower is this band that's coming into. And this AI platforms, which are screening resumes, are now being trained on hundreds and thousands of resumes. So what are they going to do? They're going to focus it right in the center of early majority and late majority. And you are driving towards mediocrity because of the system we have created. It needs an innovator to hire an innovator. So when you want to build your team of innovation and you want to hire us, make sure you get best of your innovation people to do the interviews and let them pick who will be the innovator for your organization. So make sure you build the right hiring team and not a panel, a panel that's spread across all the things, and then you take an. Because when you put 6 people and you want to have a finance guy, a marketing guy, a program manager, and everybody else should interview the manager, guess what manager you will get? You will get smack in the middle. You will get right at the middle of the hiring team average. And that's okay. If that's what your objective is, then you're not really looking at building an innovation mindset. You're just building capacity. Remember that. Growing an innovator, inspiring an innovator in an organization is also a task. I'll tell you what, these are the guys who are managers' favorites because they learn quickly, they're a little bit ahead of the game, and they do things for the management. And they are the ones who actually climb the corporate ladder faster than others. And the true innovators, they're a pain in the butt for the managers. Managers don't like it. They don't want them in the meeting room. They say, can you keep him, let's not call him for the ideation session. He will be way out on the left field. He's going to just break all the norms. We really can't handle his ideas. Without realizing that those are the ideas you may be looking for. So inspiring an innovator for career growth, inspiring an innovator to engage in hard conversation, in developing your strategic roadmap, in creating disruptive products, needs special effort. Okay, let's talk about failure for a moment here. I'll tell you what, I would go out on the limb and I would say innovators never fail. Innovators either achieve something or they learn something and they develop humility out of it. Okay? There's a beautiful article on value of failures. They said when a project fails, you learn a lot. You actually discover new things. It also exposes your capability gaps. It brings out things that you would not have gotten if your project had been successful. It also breaks down the ego. It makes you more amenable to listening. And it makes it easy to pivot towards a progress. It is also shown to promote integrity, accountability, building team trust. So there's a lot of value in a project that failed. And these are all intangibles. And we tend to miss it out. And unfortunately, managers don't account for this as a positive outcome. They don't realize that if a team sticks together through a failure, they are up for a much bigger success later on. I am very proud of my most successful failure ever in my 30 years of career. I failed 10 times, 12 times. I don't know, many times. But this one, in 1996, we tried to build a remote control aerial machine to just deliver food packets across the university campus. That was an objective defined for the student design project. This machine never flew, but it got us so much learning about how helicopter flies, how teams work. It put the institute in a very different light. The design team, student team, really learned the design process, and now they've all gone to do big things in their life. So much came out of this helicopter which did not fly. And if it had flown, we would not have learned 10 other things that we learned. So when we go through all of this mindset piece and we want to change things, it's not straightforward. It's not simple. Your plan might look like a flat line, but when you start taking the path, you're going to get lots and lots of hurdles. The reality is very different in the plans, but stick to it. You will get there. I'll share with you a brief movie here. Well, that pretty much brings the end to this conversation here. We have 15 minutes. We can get on to the discussion. Before I go, what I would like to share with you is thank you very much. All of the content in these 4 sessions is available on 4 books. Now, we also have a website where we talk about these books, where you can go in and you can, what we call as a selfie, which means you can take a self-assessment. It will walk you through the questions with multiple choice answers related to the content from the book. And you can get a self-assessment of where your strengths are, where your opportunities may be to build the innovation value chain, to build the innovation framework, build the innovation mindset. All of that is possible by engaging with us online. Also, I would like to mention that these last 4 sessions were very generic, and I'm hoping that you were able to relate some of it with what you do with your workplace. And we are actually open to specific conversations that you might want to have with NEDAC, with me, with anybody over here. You know, engage at your convenience, at your will. With that, I will hand over back to Kevin.
Ripi, thank you. As always, in as many times as I've listened to you speak and sat through and participated in one of your workshops and discussions, I always take away another insight, another piece of information that allows me to think differently about my particular approach to the innovation mindset and a chance to renew the discussion. The comment board that Zoom provides is lit up throughout the course of your presentation this morning. The comments and questions, both insightful and in some cases inspirational, or providing a little bit of humor and color to the nature of the discussion. I would invite those of you who would like to share your thoughts, ask a question, offer a comment or insight, to please unmute yourself and do so. This is a great opportunity to engage in an exploratory conversation about the subject matter that Ripi has so generously covered for us in this 4-part series.
I'll share some thoughts. This is Don. Just as Kevin was referring to the chat box lighting up, I was kind of feverishly taking notes of my own throughout the session, and notes is actually the wrong term. I think I was participating in self-exploration and taking down ideas that Ripi had generated in this presentation, and just like in the previous 3, Ripi, you did that in those as well. I've found I started these sessions expecting to hear about innovation process, and I did, but there was so much more. There was a self-discovery component to it with purpose. There's a leadership component to it with mindset, and I find all that stuff very relatable. I've worked for several companies, including my own, and I find all that very useful. It's kind of an experience-based methodology that I'll call it, that you're presenting, and I'll call that experience wisdom. For example, one of the thoughts that I had today, because I think I've done this sometimes successfully and sometimes not, but culture in a company should be chosen, right? It shouldn't just happen. The leadership should actually choose it and cultivate it. And then I think the challenge for people, with talent to offer to companies is to find companies that have a culture that aligns with their personal values. And if you can do that, you got a shot at having, a lot of fun working there. And if you don't, it'll be less fun. So, for example, that was one of the thoughts that occurred to me. So thank you for putting on these 4 sessions. I found them amazingly useful.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for your compliments. Really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from somebody who has successfully grown a company and and taken an exit.
Ripi, it's Frank Bowl.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Very good. I was thinking that perhaps if we could make these 4 sessions available to the U.S. Merit Committee, it might stimulate some project activity among the ISO folks.
We'll be happy to do that, Frank. I think we have recorded all those. You and I can connect on this one and see where we go. For everybody who's on there, Frank is the leader of the ISO 56000 activity representing ANSI US at the international level.
So thank you.
Frank and I have now worked together for 2 years on the ISO 56000 innovation management guidelines.
I like the way you focused on the value chain. I think that could be one of the new frontiers, optimization of the value chain using innovation and quality management principles.
Thank you. We can do that. Mark has raised his hand.
Yeah, I have one comment, and thank you for acknowledging this because I have to go for another call at 10. On slide 39, it shows your bell curve, and it shows the caption underneath is most productive fraction here. I'll just throw this out. I would make a distinction on this slide between leaders and managers.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's the leader's responsibility to have and communicate and cascade through the organization the vision, it seems to me that the leader is the one for whom the early adopters would be the favorite, because that's in effect promulgating the vision. And at least in the corporate environments in which I've worked, the managers tended to be, pick an adjective, most territorial, most afraid, least likely to let go. So I would just, I offer that as a suggestion.
Thank you. I think I will take that on to the other chart where we were talking about how leaders sway the culture. Managers tend in that direction and the employees over there. I'll put that comment over there. Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anything in the chat? I have not had a chance to read that. Prashant, is there any questions in there that I should address?
Yeah, there's one question in chat from Foy. How can innovation be incentivized, or should innovation be incentivized as a form of motivation?
Very good question. Yeah, innovation can actually be gamified, right? So gamification means that now the motivation is tied to a little bit of an inspiration, motivation, all of it together, right? Do things like hackathons. We also have a tool, we call it a dolphin tank, which is a copy of Shark Tank, but you take it on an organization level where you say every quarter we will have this open innovation forum where you can come in and you have 5 minutes to present your idea, and the winners will get certain awards, right? And whether company chooses to pursue that idea or not comes later on. And when you choose to pursue that idea, you can have a different kind of an incentive. I have seen companies putting incentives on patents, putting incentives on completing the project, but most of the time it's the ideation phase and your qualification of ideas that really needs to be incentivized. If you have a mechanism like one of the tools we have, a software which allows you to capture ideas across the company, actually does bring up things that we talk about, how many ideas generated, how many ideas promoted, how many products moved through various stages and taken to the market, what revenue is generated. So all of that can actually be gamified into, you can call it, innovation tiger, innovation lion, innovation fox. You can define badges, you can define the cash awards. Remember one thing, the innovator is actually a lot more motivated and incentivized if their idea is accepted, if their idea is funded, or if they are allowed to publish, present, go travel to the conferences and trade shows and stuff like that. So a lot of companies tend to think, oh, I'll put $1,000 cash award, but then take an idea, give the guy $1,000, give the idea to somebody else, their favorite manager, and hope it works. It doesn't work that way. So you also have to tie the motivation of what actually motivates the innovator, which is generally not the money. So you have to figure out other ways to incentivize an innovator. But yes, it should be done and it can be done. Bob Trinka, I think innovation by the team and success measured in commercial terms or by reaching corporate objectives. Corporations can actually have objectives around innovation. I liked what 3M started 20 years ago, which is we want to see what fraction of your revenue this year is coming from the products that did not exist 3 years ago. And they put a metric around that, like 25%, 30%, 33%, which means you must continuously come up with new products. And that vitality piece, of course, it's industry dependent. If you're in aerospace, it should be 10 years. And if it's IT, it should be 2 years, right? But 3M at that time was looking at 3 years for their products. And that's a very good financial metric to put in terms of the leadership that really loves to look at numbers from the sales and revenue side of it. I'm just looking through the chat if there is anything I could address.
While you're looking through the chat, Ripi, I know that in addition to myself, there are a number of others who are on today's call who have seen all 4 or at least 3 out of the 4 of the sessions. Would any of those of you who have listened in and participate care to make any additional comments?
This is Robbie, though. I learned a lot. Thanks, Ripi. So it is a lot of learning that I got during the both sessions. So thank you, and it was a great experience.
Thanks, Ravi.
Yes, also from my side, thanks for all the wisdom you shared with all of us, Ripi. As usual, very inspiring. And this is, as the 2 of us are currently working on, I think it will be volume 7 of your series. I must say, working with Ripi on a day-to-day basis, this is really a great experience. This is really what makes all of this come to life. And yeah, and what we heard today, yeah, this was so much, yeah, reflecting my experience I had in some of the big industries, some of the steps why I actually started my own company, and why I think some of what Ripi described currently, what's going on in the big industries, is actually what really helps all the startups to not get overruled by all the big industries. But because the big industries, even if they really try hard, at some point they will not be able to do it anymore. At least that's what I think currently.
I think there's a room for big industries to do things that small and medium organizations cannot do. If you want to build a next jet engine, it needs 2,000 engineers. It's not for a small business to do. Small business may come with a disruption where you come up with an electric engine, completely different, right?
Yeah.
Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin are actually showing that a small size or a medium sized business can actually go to space and a lot more affordably and can take passengers to space. So there are visionaries out there that are demonstrating things differently. But to Don's point earlier, each of those companies also need to build a brand new culture. I don't think Elon Musk would have been successful in doing what he did if he had just acquired an old Boeing unit or an old unit of GM or Ford to build his Tesla. It would not have worked. He had to rebuild the culture from ground up, from zero onwards, to create a company like that. All right, I don't have anything else. David, you want to say something? Okay.
Well, we're just over the top of the hour. Johannes, I've had the privilege of working with Ripi as well, and I echo your comments and sentiment. It is a beneficial experience. Ripi will argue that it's beneficial both ways. There's likely some truth in that. And it is never, ever dull and boring. The conversations lead in a myriad of different directions with discoveries and many different types of opportunities exposed and explored as a result. And it's in that vein that I would invite all of us who are participants and who have been together listening and benefiting from Ripi's accumulated wisdom to take an opportunity. I invite you to reach out and to start a conversation. Explore and discover what additional benefit might be available to you in a conversation with Ripi through one of his workshops, or merely just to share some ideas. It has been a great pleasure to host these 4 sessions, and I thank you all for your participation.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for giving me your time and listening to me, and also giving me some feedback, as well as questions that will now make me think even harder. Bye.